Well, Loretta, here we are, episode 18, and well into November 2024 already. I don't know
Wow.
for everybody listening, but the time has been flying, literally. But it is our great privilege to be back with another episode, and we feel this one is one of the most important, actually, that we're going to bring to you or have brought to you. We are going to take you through 8 steps, nice, practical steps regarding anger and how to shift it out of your body and process it in a healthy and safe way. We've done 2 previous episodes about anger. Please go back and listen to them. It would be better to listen to them before you listen to this one or before you start implementing the steps, because we provided an amazing background to anger. And so we don't want to revisit all of that, but we want to dive straight into the steps, because yeah, it's taken me many, many years and thousands of hours of research, and Loretta the same, to bring to you now in a short episode what we are. And I thank you for Dr. Nicole Lepera, the holistic psychologist, mostly, but also Gabor Mate, the amazing P&I book I always reference, and my own self, because I always have to seem to practice what I'm researching. The essence of this has been extracted from all of that. So thank you to those people for doing their work. And that's why Loretta and I are going to carry on doing our work, because it's important. So thank you for being at the other end of this. So here they are. Okay. We need to feel anger, as we need to feel all emotions. We can't bypass it, but we also can't rant and rage, because that makes us sick. So how to be angry and how to choose what to do with it rather than suppressing it, exploding, or numbing or soothing it, is what we're going to take you through today. So we're going to cover 8 steps. I'm going to just quickly list the 8 steps and then briefly talk you through each one. Number 1 is cultivating awareness that you're angry. Number 2 is create a safe space for the anger to arise. Number 3, own, allow, and take responsibility for your anger. Number 4, name it using the correct language. Number 5, feel it and hold space for it. Number 6, begin the process of releasing it. Release it in your body first and channel it into something else. Number 7, ask yourself, what is driving this anger? Is there a reason for it? And number 8, choose how to react, choose how to respond, make a new choice. So now I've said this number 1 to number 8, but actually these can happen in a different sequence. They can all kind of happen together. I think what we really want to put across today is that most of us want to jump to sorting it out, getting rid of it because it's a very uncomfortable emotion, or bypassing it through eating, if you me, stuffing my face, or distracting myself in some way, soothing myself, blaming someone outside of myself. That's the way most of us do it, or we don't even know it's happening, and then we just start feeling anxious and sick. But we've talked through all of that in the last 2 episodes, so we really want to put home to you the fact that it's very important to start cultivating the awareness, holding space for it, kind of figuring out what's going on, where it is in your body, before you go to the step of, okay, how am I going to respond to this? Because we all want to go straight to that, because that feels like the quick fix, the easy way. But everything else beforehand is going to inform how you react to it and how you respond. So, let's start with cultivating awareness. Cultivating very deep, compassionate self-awareness is probably the most critical starting step in this whole journey, actually, of feeling your emotions and becoming the highest version of yourself, healing your body. And that sounds easy, but I can tell you 7 years ago when I started it, I was already, I thought, an awakened person. I'd been on a spiritual journey for a long time, but I had no idea how I wasn't at all self-aware, actually, to my thought processes, to my emotions, to my automatic reactions. So, and anger particularly is one of those emotions, as we said before, that we tend not to recognize, even because it's been given a very bad name, and it feels very uncomfortable, and we've been encouraged to avoid it, actually. So really the most important starting point is to recognize that you're experiencing anger, to notice it, and to notice where it is in your body. We've also been encouraged to bypass our bodies, even those of us that have eaten healthy and exercised. But it's absolutely foundational to have the awareness, to recognize it, and to see where it's sitting in your body. Notice what is going on. Catch it. Intentionally acknowledge that it's there. Now, this sounds like simple, but let me tell you, it's going to take you time and a lot of practice to get to the point, and a lot of patience and self-compassion. It really takes time to be this self-aware, I can tell you. So just be gentle with yourself, but just start doing it. And we said last time, and we need to reiterate, sleeping well, not overworking, sleeping well, doing your mindfulness practices, your nervous system regulation, your somatic practices is very important, because otherwise you haven't got a steady enough foundation to even recognize it, never mind work with it. So if you are starting to feel agitated, do you want to come in, Loretta?
Yes, I did, but now I've forgotten what I wanted to say. What I was going to say about recognizing it is that, one of the ways that you can cultivate the self-awareness is that when you don't feel good, to just ask yourself, like, what's going on? To just actually take 2 seconds to step back and just acknowledge, you know what, I don't feel good. I'm experiencing some sort of negativity, all right? And what is that? So the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. If you don't ask the question, you cannot be aware. Thanks, John DeMartini. That was one of his, right? So it's really, really important that you just, if you can, we all know what it feels like when we don't feel well. Emotionally well. I know what it feels like when I'm not living my best life. I know what it feels like when I wake up this morning and I feel like, man, or I'm really, really irritated by something or someone, and or I'm being really critical of someone else or critical of myself. You see, I might not feel like I'm like, I might just go, oh, that person's so stupid, or people who have this opinion are such idiots. That doesn't sound angry. And then just ask yourself, well, what is it? What is that? If I had to, what is it about them that really annoys me? And how annoyed am I really? Because if there's enough for you to recognize that someone else is an idiot, or you don't agree with what they're doing, or you don't agree with what they say, you're probably already angry, either at them or at yourself. So just a little tip, ask yourself the question.
Yeah, it's that's powerful. I love that. Start asking questions. So if you're starting to feel agitated, and I think that's exactly what you've just said, you know that something's going down. So even when your nervous system's very regulated and you're well balanced, it happened to me this morning. I started freaking out over nothing, just started getting really agitated. It's helpful if your nervous system's regulated. You catch it faster. You can ask the question faster. You can deal with it faster. So because my nervous system, I was very stable this morning, very regulated, I was like, oh, you're too agitated. You're so irritated over nothing. What's going on here? What is this really about? I need to take the pause. Let me not keep on getting in the story of this, but let me drop into my body and feel what's going on. Because until I can do that, I can't make a different choice. So, yeah. Yes.
Sorry,
Loretta.
last thing I'm going to add, because I said to Antoinette, oh, we can make this a short one. Here I go. When you are irritated, very often you want to externalize that, right? And if you recognize it, please don't go, Loretta, don't be ridiculous. You're overreacting to something that's really minor, because what you're really then doing is you're negating the fact that you're basically telling yourself it's not okay to be irritated. So this is not about, is it okay? Is it not okay? Is it justified? You don't even have to ask those questions, because if you've got it, it's there. So there's no justification required for this, right? So it's not about noticing, oh yes, I'm irritated or I'm annoyed, and then telling yourself to stop doing that. That's not what we want you to do. It's like, I'm annoyed. The question, that's why you don't just tell yourself, you don't say, Loretta, don't be ridiculous. Stop doing that. Oh, look at that. You're annoyed again. Just take 7 deep breaths and calm down. You're going to ask yourself, why? What is it about this that's driving me nuts? Why am I annoyed? Okay. So I think it's very important that you don't just tell yourself to stop being ridiculous or stop being stupid, because that's the authority figure in your head, a parent, some sort of disapproving authority figure from your childhood telling you to actually buck up and be positive. That's bypassing. Let's not do that.
Yeah, 100%, Loretta. So it's a very smooth transition into number 3, which is own, allow, and take responsibility for your anger. It's not saying it's wrong. It's not. I know now that I'm starting to notice my irritability. And yes, I do consider why, and then I work with it, and it changes itself. Actually, you don't. So when you stop seeing it as wrong, I think that's what you're saying. When you stop seeing it as wrong, but you start doing the steps we're talking about, it kind of sorts itself out. But because the thing is that we don't like uncomfortable emotions because we feel we've lost control. And because of this, most of us deal with anger by looking at what caused the anger. That's what I was doing this morning. Oh, those idiots are cutting the lawn again, and the security company is always disturbing me. It's them, it's them, it's them. And then I was like, okay, well, it is them, but actually this is my anger, and it's my responsibility to own it, allow it, not judge it, but also to release it. So not to wait for the thing to be resolved, because it's never going to be resolved. They're always going to be cutting grass every Tuesday. But once we start allowing it without judging it or just immediately wanting to bypass it, that already means we're taking responsibility and we're acknowledging that it's ours. So that the outside thing needs to change maybe, but we're not remaining powerless. If we keep on making it only about the outside, we're giving all our power away, because every outside influence or relationship is going to keep triggering this, and it's never going to be us taking responsibility. We are responsible, and we need to take accountability without self-judgment, without trying to immediately fix it. Does that make sense, Loretta?
Yeah, to me, that makes perfect sense. Clear as a bell.
Listen, if any of you've got questions or stuff doesn't make sense or you need more explanation, please drop us an email or drop a note in the comments on the YouTube or the podcast, because Loretta and I are very deep into this journey. So sometimes we might take something for granted. So step 4, and this I have to give Nicole LePera complete credit for, and it makes so much sense, is naming it is important. It doesn't mean we judge ourselves or we have to fix it, but we need to name it, and using the right language is very critical, she says, because then that creates a brain reaction which helps us with it. So when we name it, what we do is we say, I am angry, not I am experiencing anger. Oh, sorry. I am experiencing anger rather than I'm angry. You see, I automatically got that wrong, because that's what I do all the time. Still now, I go, I'm so angry. I'm so irritable. I did that this morning. And LePera's saying it takes time to shift that language. It takes time before you start using different language. And I've just done it myself. So there we go. I am experiencing anger, because I'm not actually that angry, but I am experiencing it. So it takes time to do this. So be patient with yourself, because once you start doing it this way, it creates new neural pathways. And giving yourself the language and saying it out loud means you're identifying it. And then also it's good to do the somatic awareness thing if you can at this point. How are you feeling in your body? Is your jaw clenched? Is your face flushed? Have you got indigestion? I got immediate indigestion this morning. That's an indicator for me now. And I'm feeling irritable and nervous and I'm freaking out. I mean, hello. I mean, up until 2 years ago, I was just letting all that happen, then being upset with myself. And then that creates another whole layer of, as Loretta said in the last episode, shame and guilt and anger. So, yeah, let's label it, name it in the appropriate way. And that's the next step. But we're so disconnected from our bodies, as we said in the last episode, often we don't even realize what's playing out in our body. And that's why I've been getting chronic indigestion recently, which is something I've never got in the past, because sometimes we don't see the subtle signs, you know. So now I'm just getting this boom, indigestion. It's like, okay, what's going on here? My body's telling me something. Okay. So number 6, or Loretta, do you want to chip in, or can I go on to number 6?
No. Now, I'll put my hand up. My finger.
Okay. And please don't apologize for butting in, because we were good together.
When you see the finger, it means I've got something to say, okay?
When Loretta raises her finger, I listen. Yeah. So now only at number 6, we begin the process of releasing it. Okay. So we've done 5 steps before this. So please don't try and just jump to number 6. That's what we all want to do. We're all so impatient. We've all bought into this quick fix microwave solution stuff out there. And even before we can process it in the next step 7, we need to release it in our body first. We cannot bypass the body, especially with anger. So the recommendation is to channel it into something else, to move it out of your body. So from Loretta, it's a cold plunge. Dr. Nicole LaPira says the same, because often we don't even know what's going on in our bodies, or we can't easily regulate again. So you dive into a cold plunge and it kind of resets you. Apparently, it's not something you're ever going to find me doing. But I have. I've beaten a tea towel against the cupboard, or gone for a quick walk around the block. Or Nicole LaPira says she's got a punch bag is a great idea. I think if you've got a punch bag, sometimes you need to just physically remove yourself from the situation. If it's a relationship issue, if someone else is pissing you off, the main thing is to move it out your body and not to fall back into your evolutionary driven reactive patterns or suppressions. So that's why catching it and then doing something somatic. So for me, I sometimes just stand and shake, or you need to get that heightened energy out your body. Am I right, Loretta? And the thing is, though, we all feel embarrassed to do the things that will create that for us. Like, for example, we talked about this before. Go and take a pillow and punch it. And if your husband's in the room and it's him that's made you angry, go into the toilet. I think Loretta said last time, put your hand in front of your mouth and scream at him, and he won't be able to hear you.
While stomping your feet. Stomp your feet at the same time so that you're moving.
Yeah. Go out in your backyard if you live in a space where there's no neighbors, and take a stone and throw it at pretending your husband's out there. Shaking, walking, punching, running, nature, all of those are making new body-based choices. Loretta's got her hand up.
I want to say one thing about, so listen, every single action we take, no, I'm not going to say that. Okay, no. So something like the cold plunge or nature, so like if I had to choose, I would go and choose just like going for a lovely walk on the beach. You know what? There's no screaming. There's no drama involved with that, but that's sometimes not enough. Okay. So watch out that whichever one you choose and that you're most comfortable with isn't part of your strategy of avoidance, because these are useful tools. So like cold plunging, I can cold plunge to avoid getting upset today. And yes, cold plunging is really good and it resets your nerves. So for me, cold plunging resets my nervous system so that I can actually have more awareness when the emotions are there, more so than stop them. I don't climb in an ice bath when I'm angry. I don't do that. climb in the ice bath in the morning so that if I do get angry today, I'm going to notice it. Okay. And one other thing that I wanted to just say about cold plunging is it doesn't have to be your whole body. You can literally take a basin of water and make it cold. Like you can put some ice in it. And if you can, just immerse your face into it for like 10 seconds. That's enough to just actually stop you and bring you to awareness. Or put your hands in. You know, your hands are really sensitive. Right? So you put your hands in ice cold water for 10, 20 seconds. It just brings you into the present moment because all your focus is on how cold the water is that you've got your hands in. So it doesn't have to be a full body immersion, but just a word of caution again. Moving it is necessary. So one of the reasons why I think cold plunging works is because if you make it cold enough, you shiver. So, you know, the cold induces the shivering, which is the tremors, which is the working it through your body. But please don't think like, oh, well, I can't cold plunge because I don't have a cold plunge bath and blah, 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 blah. You don't need any of that, right? You need a bowl of water that you can put your face or your hands into. That was the one thing that I wanted to say. Yeah, and be careful of being attracted only to the ones that sound more passive. Because I'm like that. Like my family, screaming and performing was the norm. All right. So that makes me the most uncomfortable. So I deliberately go and do one of those ones that are uncomfortable, not like super, but like the silent scream with the foot stomping, because it's not comfortable for me. But my word, do I feel better when I've done it, like so much better. And just one last little thing that I want to say is when you look at a toddler that has a tantrum, they never still. They scream, they cry, they fling themselves on the ground, they stamp. And okay, so mimicking that toddler behavior is also a really good one, right? So, you know, you might not necessarily be able to let rip with the screaming, but you can lie down. You can lie on your bed. It's safe, right? And literally just lose your shit, stomp your feet and stomp your hands, because that is acknowledging it and allowing it to be and move through your body.
Yeah. And so everything Loretta and I bring is also the foundation of it is to bring you more into alignment with who you really are, your intuitive self, your higher self. Because the more you become in alignment with that, the more you know what you need at that particular moment. So anger, in fact, all emotions are that thing. Sometimes for me, I lie down and I do static back and it's exactly what I need. Other times, very often going to the beach because there's multiple things I can do there. I can scream, I can cold plunge if I want to get in the ocean. Our beach is very quiet. I can walk fast, I can pray. It does a lot. Nature is a very good grounder. But sometimes, yeah, we need different things at different times, but it takes time to cultivate the practice of being able to be triggered and in this awful emotion and also tapping into the intuition. So sometimes it could be as simple as visualizing the person that's made you angry and throwing stones at them. So it's a passive thing, but with a kind of aggressive visualization. It could be visualizing that person in an elevator with you and you freaking punching them. Could be speaking your truth to someone who's hurt you just in a meditation. And sometimes that just won't work. So you also have to start the awareness and the observing and not bypassing it, but then feeling into what feels right at the moment and what works for you. And often if we're in public, this happens and we can't. So the main thing then is just to know that it's okay to feel it. It's not shameful to feel it. It's healthy and normal, and you might have to deal with it later because we can't be doing any of that, actually, if we're at a freaking dinner party or something. Yeah, quite exciting, but this seems very simple, but it's very big work, actually. Okay. So then we can get to number 7. And sometimes these all happen together, as I've said, or in a different sequence. So, but we have to step them, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Number 7 is ask yourself, what is driving this anger? Is there a reason for it? You don't always have to do that, but I find it exceptionally valuable because I'm a person who gets very, very irritable. over very small things. I completely overreact, and I know that it's something that holds me back from living my true purpose and my higher self, because it's become a reactive thing, because I never was able to express anger as a child. I grew up till 56 never showing any anger, was completely passive aggressive. And so I can deal with big things well, but I tend to, I think I obviously still have unconscious stuff and all that. And at some points I just start getting irritable over nothing, like grass cutters. And then it's very important for me to say to myself, what's actually going on here? What's driving this anger? Is there actually a reason for it? Because as Loretta said, or we said in a previous episode, anger always has a secondary emotion that underpins it. It's usually fear, loss, sadness, abandonment, perceived or real. And it's mostly, I think Loretta brought this up last time, is that we've abandoned ourselves in some way, or it's some trigger from the past. And mostly we don't know that that's what's driving the anger, because it's the part of the iceberg that's submerged. We are only experiencing the tip and seeing the tip. Yeah. So very valuable exercise to, well, I got this from Lapierre as well, although a friend told me the same thing yesterday. She was brought up this way, actually. Ask yourself 3 questions. The question again, what is driving this anger? What is actually wrong here? Is there a reason for it? What set it off? What ignited it? And if you are aware enough, you can then refocus and make a different choice. And I also often ask myself, what do I actually want? What is it that I'm not getting? What need of mine is not being met? So what's driving the anger? Is there a reason for it? And this morning I realized, actually, I was really angry with myself because I've been procrastinating all morning about preparing for this episode. And it's just like one of my ego's avoidance tactics. And the other thing we haven't said, it's actually next on my notes, is it's an unconscious feeling of being out of control. It's a form of fear, and it comes in disguises. So what happens is, anger can be disguised as irritability, but it can be procrastination, avoidance. Oh boy. So this morning I was avoiding, and then I leave everything to the last minute. Disconnection, dissociation, withdrawal, conflict avoidance, false positivity. We talked about this before. It can come in all those disguises. So I actually was I was disguising anger towards myself about procrastinating, and it came out as irritability to lawnmowers.
Also get irritated by the lawnmowers. This must be why Antoinette and I work together, because I actually also I get easily irritated, right? But I've noticed that I've been there my whole life. And actually part of my story for that is like, I'm just like really sensitive. And I've, so no offense to all the people who identify as empaths out there, but you know what? Sometimes when we're super sensitive because we're so empathetic, this was our liver organ function energy is not great, and it's the organ of hypersensitivity. And the truth is we're actually angry as hell about whatever. So I just want to say something about those questions. So you may ask yourself, like, what's underpinning this? And, like, what has triggered this? And, how can I make a different choice? And you might not have any answers. So what I want to say is it's okay if you don't have an answer. You know why? Because when you ask yourself the questions, you're basically saying to your subconscious, I am looking for the deeper answers behind why I get angry. And you may not have those answers revealed now, but now, and your reticular activating system says, oh, this is what she's after. And so the likelihood of you finding the answers in the future becomes more, if that makes sense, right? So it's not that it doesn't matter what the answer is. It is asking the question starts actually programming your brain for the answers to become apparent to you. So I might ask the question right now, why am I so irritated? Or, what's triggered me? Or, maybe can I make a different choice? But I want to just say before you get the answer of can I make a different choice, please make sure that you've processed it, because while the anger is stuck in you, the can I make a different choice is often going to be one of those, yes, well, I just need to be more zen and meditate for 4 hours every day and just love and light and send the lawnmower people positive vibes, okay? That's avoidance. It's bypassing. We don't want to do that, remember? So that's the one thing we don't want to do. And if we notice we've done it, please let's not judge ourselves. Just go, oh my God, there we go. Bypassing again. So now that's information. You choose to notice when you bypass, how you want to bypass, right? And then the next time you're doing it, it's going to become more obvious to you. So it's important that if you don't get the answer now, you could be on the loo, you could be in the shower, it could be tomorrow morning on your beach walk, boom, the light bulb goes off and you realize, oh, that's what it was. So if you don't get an answer in the immediate right here and now, it can mean either there is no answer and it doesn't matter, or you're just not ready for the answer, or you maybe need to process the anger a little bit more, or none of the above, and it doesn't matter. Okay. But by asking yourself the questions, you prime yourself, you prime your brain and your intuition to start looking for the answer for you. So don't think that when you ask yourself these questions and you don't get an answer, you go, that tool's shit, I'm not using that one anymore because it doesn't work. Well, because it works in a number of different ways, and it has layers. There's layers of subtlety. So please remember, every action you take informs your subconscious to basically carry out some sort of command. It tells your subconscious something about you, something about what you want. So it's not so much about the reaction that you get, or even, let's just say that you decide, okay, you're angry, you're going to do the silent scream, or you're going to have the tantrum. So you have the tantrum, you don't feel like you've dissipated it. You beat the punch, but you're like, you do it all, right? Now you're a big, hot, sweaty mess, and you're still angry. It's okay, because all the things that have gone on in your brain are about improving your self-awareness, noticing your triggers. And in fact, at the very least, what you're saying to yourself is, I care enough about myself to recognize, acknowledge, and process my anger. It's not about whether it works or doesn't work, because you don't know, you don't actually know that it's working, because you've got one set idea of, if I get the answers, this tool must work for me. Well, you don't know. What if that's not how the tool's designed? What if the tool is designed for you to get the answer tomorrow or next week when you're really ready to action it? Okay. Mm-hmm. So try not to have an expectation on the outcome you're going to get when you apply the tool, whether it's for this or anything else, because at the very least, what you are saying to your subconscious is, I matter, the way I feel matters, and I care enough for myself to focus on shifting and processing this emotion.
Brilliant. That's brilliant, okay. Loretta. And in fact, no, that's very important what Loretta just said. And in fact, it's interesting. I left out a whole step here, and I think it's because we beat at it endlessly, and that is to feel it. I think because we haven't stopped saying that. And in fact, if I go back 7 years, when I started this journey 7 years ago, there were only 2 things I was doing out of all these steps. The one was becoming self-aware. It's just starting to self-observe my thoughts and my emotions. And it took me a long time to even be able to do that, a little bit. And then I started feeling them, and I had a few tools with how to feel them. Honestly, that's where I started. Yeah. So we bring you the kind of end result. But it's a lot. It's a lot, actually. So Loretta's right, and we don't have to fix it. It's just that we're starting to know, actually, mainly, that it's okay to feel these feelings. It's important, and to become aware of them, and then just to feel them. And that in itself is enough. But we're giving you the whole thing in case...
Well, in case you're on the fast track, you want to do all 7.
In fact, we are fast tracking. If I'd known all these steps 7 years ago, I might have actually done them all, and maybe not all at once. Yeah, and you've got to be so compassionate with yourself and so patient. It's a journey, and it's daily repetitive practice. The main thing, I don't know, Loretta, I'm sure you agree, is that you make a commitment to show up every day, to be as aware as you can, and to keep your end vision in mind. Loretta reminded me that before we started recording. What is the end result you really want for your life? Wake up every day, remind yourself of that, promise yourself that you're going to be as aware as possible, and do your best, and know that your ego is probably going to try and trip you up, because that's what it does, and it will your whole life. You just get more and more aware of it. And actually, Nicole LePera, I think it's LePera or Dr. Lisa Rankin, has a cute little affirmation to say every day. You actually speak to your ego, you give it a name, and you say, you know what, today we're going to do this inner work, and it's safe. It's safe for us to show up to do this. So I always say to mine, I'd like you to come along for the ride, but not run the show. So yeah, you're not trying to get rid of that ego. So you're right, Loretta. I tend to go straight into the end result, forgetting the journey, actually. So yeah.
I just also want to highlight something, and this probably, I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on this, is one of the things that works for me when I'm like, you know, okay, so now, you know, how am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling the feeling, why I'm experiencing irritation right now. I ask myself, what the other person did or said, what am I making it mean about me? Right? So this happens often with my husband. My husband asks me a question that I can't answer. So I'm not good enough, right? As one of my primary limiting beliefs, which means I've got to get an A for an exam. And literally, when he asks me a question, and it can be a simple question like, what did the estate agent say about the progress of our house sale? And I forgot to message her and ask her, for example. So instead of just saying, oh, I forgot to message her and I don't actually know, I'll lose it, and I'll go, oh, you know, can't you see that I'm busy with blah, 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 blah. And then, so now I notice it, usually after the fact, then apologize for having bitten his head off for no real reason, because, I mean, the man was just asking a question, okay? And then asking myself, okay, what, like, why? What is this? Not why did it, what does it mean about me? He asking me that question, what does it mean about me? Can you see it means I messed up? I didn't get an A for like having done the thing on the to-do list. And then I can go, okay, that's what I'm making his question mean that I'm stupid and lazy and ineffectual. And honestly, when I look at it that way, I see how ridiculous that is. So I don't judge myself for being rich. I'm like, oh, I've made that little question mean all of this. And I can actually go to him and say, why did you ask me the question? He goes, well, because I'd like to know what's happening with the sale of the house. I'll be, oh, so then I just didn't mean a thing about me. He wasn't even thinking about me when he asked that question. So that's when I notice that, it takes the sting out of it. And it's not, there's no judgment on that. Like, what is this? What have I made this mean about me? Oh, I've made this mean that I'm stupid and I'm lazy and I'm ineffective. I mean, like, okay, well, is that really true? Like, what are the facts here? You know, I had a marketing coach once, and she was talking about marketing. She said, you got to separate the data from the drama. So the data is 3 people liked your post. The drama is I'm a failure because no one liked my post and my business is going to die. That's the drama. So, and I have a client actually this is a story I bumped into the other day outside a shop. And she was telling me about how hectic her life is. I think I might have told you all this. And she was telling me about this hectic time she's having in her life. And she says, you know what, Loretta? All I keep on saying to myself is, what is the data and what is the drama? What is the data and what is the drama, right? And if just by saying that, you're like, okay, this is the drama that I've created about the facts. And it's not a judgment. It's just, and it's because I have a limiting belief, and a number of them, and we all have. And so it's just being triggered, right? So that's just another way of looking at it. And so I just want to wind up what I'm saying, because otherwise, I'm going to talk all day. Is that Antoinette and I were having this conversation this morning, and I think this sort of pertains to number 7. You know, you can make it. You know, once you've asked yourself those questions, then the last question is, what can I do differently? How can I make a different choice? Our ego communicates to us through our thoughts and our feelings. So when you are having, whether they're super positive or super negative emotions, that's your ego that's informing that reality for you. And that's wonderful, because without that, we wouldn't be alive, right? So when you ask yourself, what can I do differently, from that place of, well, I've just messed it up and I now need to do it differently, you're answering the question from your ego. And you may get a different reaction. But you know what? It's not going to stop the patterning. Okay, so it's not going to change the patterning, because you can work it through your body, you can feel it, you can acknowledge it, you can do the somatic processes. But ultimately what we want is not that we don't want to get angry, because that's a normal response in life, but we don't want to get stuck in this loop of constantly processing. This is what I discovered with therapy when I was in therapy, and it was very useful for me. And eventually I was like, oh my God, I'm going round and round. Okay, so I've now identified the stories. This is I'm becoming obsessed with the processing of all this negative stuff, right? And this honestly wasn't bypassing, because I used a whole lot of different other tools to get this awareness. So we can not be fixing. Okay, no. If we stay in the constantly processing, it becomes very easy to get stuck in the fixing loop. So here's the thing. You might be okay with noticing your anger, acknowledging your anger, feeling where it is in your body, right? Dispersing that anger through taking one of these steps and these tools, right? Asking yourself these questions, increasing your awareness. Until tomorrow, when you get triggered by the same thing, and then you've got to go through the same process, or you get triggered by something similar. All right. So if we want to move on to sort of the next level of awareness, where we still get triggered, but maybe we get triggered less often. All right. I don't bite my husband's head off 5 times a day. I only bite his head off once a day, which means that for the other 4 times a day, we can actually focus on our connection. Then if you want to transcend it, it's really important that, as Antoinette mentioned earlier, you focus on what is it that you would love instead. Now, you can't just say what I'd love is not to be triggered. What I'd love is not to be irritated, because that's what's called a negative vision. You're going, my vision is to not be negative, not be triggered and not be angry, which basically means that you're judging the fact that you're angry. It's not good. It keeps the ego loop going. All right. And so if Antoinette, for example, in her example this morning, I'm sure she does, what is it that she really wants? Well, you know what she really wants? She really wants a great podcast episode. That's actually, this morning, I'm now putting words in Antoinette's mouth, but that's the focus, right? The focus of our morning was a great podcast episode, actually. And the focus beyond that is why? Because we want to change the paradigm. We want to change how people see and think about disease. We want people to be empowered in terms of their healing, all right? We want to create that mind shift. That's like the big vision that we have. So it's very difficult when I'm busy trying to chew my husband's face off, because he's irritated me, to connect to my vision. But once I've processed that, if I remind myself of what is my why? What am I doing this for? So if Antoinette reminds herself, what is her focus? Her focus is great podcast episode. I think she sorted out the outline or whatever it is that she was procrastinating, but she got it done in 20 minutes. Done. So when you shift your focus onto the why, right? Whatever that why is, whether it's your purpose. So say if Antoinette was irritated with herself because she was procrastinating, what was she procrastinating on? Getting ready for the podcast. So if she keeps on beating herself up about not doing the podcast, and she instead, if she can, with that awareness, just goes, right, what is the outcome that I really want this morning? I want a great podcast episode. Okay, now she shifted her focus from her, this is my angry, that's why I'm being angry, and I've been feeling the anger, and this is what triggered me, and all those things, useful, necessary, all right? But once you've done that, when you can connect to the why, what it is that you really would love, not just what do you want, what would you love? Look at the big picture, what would you love? You basically create a thread between you and the future, and that vision pulls you there. It helps to pull you there so that while you're doing this processing, so tomorrow I get triggered again and I have another awareness and another insight, but I keep my focus, I keep on shifting my focus onto my why, not bypassing, not avoiding the truth, really getting real with the truth of where I am right now, but also connecting to the truth of what I would love to create. With healing, this is how shit I feel right now, and these patterns are making me sick, and I get that. What would I love? You know what? I would love vibrant health. Why? Well, because I've still got shit to do in the world. What? What is it that you've got? What are you bringing to the world? That Now your focus is shifted. And once you've done that, and you then ask yourself, what action can I take that's going to get me closer to that? So in Antoinette's case this morning, it could have been, what action can I take that's going to get me closer to the podcast? Can I sit here stewing? No. So instead of sitting stewing, she did the work, got the awareness. And I mean, she might not have done this in this language, okay? But then what she was doing is, what is she focusing on? We got to get that podcast out. Why? Because we want to make a difference in people's lives. That's why. Not because we have an appointment at 11 o'clock to record the podcast, okay? That's why. So then you shift your energy and your focus. And as soon as you've shifted your focus, and you then ask yourself, okay, so what can I do that's going to make that podcast kick ass? Sit down and like get the outline the way she wanted the outline to be. And here we are doing the podcast now. So I'm sorry, I know that was very long, but I think it's necessary.
It was actually brilliant, and it reminded me there's another potential step as well. Something you can do is, it's so brilliant what you said. If you recognize what story you're telling yourself, like the story I was telling myself this morning is, this is what you do. You procrastinate, you put things off to the last minute, and that's because your ego doesn't want you to show up because you don't feel good enough. I'm like, okay, that's my story. But I do want to show up because of the vision Loretta and I have, and it's my absolute passion before I die to do that. But in between, I did something I learned years ago in trigger work, is I did an affirmation, which was the opposite of the story I was telling myself. Actually, I, Antoinette, am actually very capable and very good at this. I've had positive feedback from people about the podcast and from Loretta. And when I do sit down and concentrate, I can get things done very fast and very well. And then I sat down and I did it. And it took, I don't think it even took 20 minutes.
And an important note on that is, so, Antoinette didn't just go, I'm great at showing up in the world. She didn't just affirm the opposite of what she was currently believing. She actually drew on evidence that she has to support the truth of what she's saying. In fact, she knows she's good, lastminute.com. She knows she's great when she has a deadline. She did get good feedback. She has gotten good feedback on the podcast. She's gotten good feedback from me. I love working with her. I don't mind the lastminute.com part so much because that's her problem. Right? As long as her lastminute.com is like not my problem, I'm okay. So it's not just about affirming the opposite. It's about literally gathering the evidence to support what you're affirming, because that is true. She is showing up in the world. She is doing that. She is taking this. It might not look like her ultimate vision of how she wants it to be, but the truth is she is showing up, and she has got evidence to indicate that. So it's really important. That's very important in terms of affirmation, is that it not just be the opposite of what you're currently thinking and feeling. It's that it has some sort of meat. Oh, meat, says me, the vegan. It has some substance. Substance is the word that I was looking for. Okay, it has some substance. It can be substantiated, and you know that it can be true.
Yeah, I think for me, it hasn't always been possible to do that. But I think to even just say, well, actually, I am capable of this. And actually, there's always evidence of it. Because a coach, one day, a friend of mine was training. So she asked me to be a subject of hers very recently, a client. She made me do an exercise, which I thought so pathetic every day, but it was so powerful. Because I'm very self-critical. It's the simple things that really, I'm so self-critical and hypercritical, and she made me write down at the end of every day the positive things people had said about me and what I had achieved. One day, and I sound like I'm bragging now, but I was so the opposite. 16 people had given me positive feedback in one way or another. Yeah. And what my mind automatically does, because it's the wiring, it's the unconscious that I'm now reprogramming, is it just bypasses noticing all those 16 compliments, and it starts as hypercritical, but you procrastinated and you lost your shit with the dog. And it's like, I don't see that. Yes, I did. So it brings me to a point we weren't going to discuss today, but it's all about paradox, actually. And true deep
100%.
healing lies in the paradox. And Loretta calls it different words, but it's like it's the uki and it's the opposite. It's always both.
100%. 100%.
So let's go into our last step, should we? Step 8. And we've probably already covered it, but choose how to react and respond, make a new choice. So we actually do have choice, like I did this morning. I didn't bypass it, but the little process, and it's very, very quick. This, you can get to a point where you can do all of this in under a few minutes, actually. It takes time to get there, but you can eventually. 7 years for me. We can choose how to react and respond to our anger. We can't control the external, we can control our response. So it's not about judging ourselves, but getting ourselves out of survival mode and out of that automatic responding, because these are triggers from the past. And actually, that's what we've just discussed. Now, a lot of people out there actually disagree about this, Dr. Lapira says. So I was like, oh, I'm glad it's not just her they're disagreeing with. People disagree about us feeling the stuff and fully going into it, because there's so much stuff out there. And Loretta and I think on an unconscious level, fear being hung and strung for this actually in our modern world. It's like there's so much stuff out there going, oh, anger's not. I mean, I looked up thoughts for the day on anger because I put out a thought for the day every day. Well, I couldn't use any of them because they all go, don't feel your anger. It's going to stop you from feeling the light. And I'm like, stop it. You're making everybody put their anger back in the closet. So, yeah, it is controversial at this point in time, but actually there is no other way. So we are, if we get hung and strung, it will be well worth it. We are responsible for how we respond and for the meaning and story we create about it. And even when bad things happen, doesn't give us a free pass to be harmful to others or internally to ourselves. And in fact, it's the biggest opportunity. The light comes from the darkness. So, yeah, and that's why some of Loretta's tools are so, so powerful. So, Loretta, I'm going to by the way, we say all of this with great compassion, because this journey is, we have to deal with a lot when we're on this journey. So we don't say any of this lightly.
No. 100%. And we don't, none of us on this journey without the critical voice in our heads. We've all got that inner critic, that's constantly trying to bash us and break us down in an attempt to keep us safe, actually, so that we can maintain the status quo. So I think actually, and I'm going to probably mangle this now, but Carl Jung said something like, you can only experience the light to the extent that you're prepared to go in and face your shadow. So the degree to which you can actually do the acknowledgement, the feeling it, the processing it, the asking yourself the question, it doesn't shut you off from the light. It literally is your ticket to the light, which is why we're so hectic about don't bypass reality. Don't try and transcend your ego without knowing your ego. Because it's like you've got two poles of a battery in terms of, you want to light a light bulb, you've got a positive pole and you've got a negative pole, right? So just imagine, the positive pole is all the love and light, and the negative pole is all the hate and darkness. And I'm using those words deliberately because hate and darkness makes people just cringe. The truth is, if you want to light a light bulb off that battery, you've got to connect both terminals. Otherwise, the light does not go on. So it's important that we connect to the truth of our egoic truth, the truth of our programming, the truth of what's underneath in the submerged under the water in the iceberg, the truth of our patterning, the truth of our triggers, the truth of how we avoid our emotions, and confront that. But then also to connect to the truth of our spirit, the truth of what we love, the truth of this limitless self that is longing to express itself in its uniqueness through you and me and all of us. But you can, that's the love and light part. You can only connect to the love and light to the degree that you are prepared to actually connect to the hate and darkness. It's like love and light is your beautiful, intelligent, sporty, amazing child. And the hate and darkness is your, needy, clingy, difficult, the black sheep. It's the white sheep and the black. You need them both, guys. You need them both. Otherwise, you can't turn the light on. So,
yeah, and the light. Sorry, you don't turn the light on to get rid of the darkness. The light comes from the darkness. And actually, just sorry, Loretta, I interrupted. And the spiritual journey, this is actually the spiritual journey, never mind psychological and physical. Any spirituality that doesn't go to the unconscious is not doing its job, to quote Richard Rohr. So that's why Loretta and I are taking you through all these steps, not actually to keep you stuck in spirals of feeling bad, but to enable you to really get to the light from this. Does that make
100%.
sense?
100%. So in our next episode, we're going to discuss this light and darkness thing, I think, in a little bit more detail, right? The how do we know whether we are getting trapped in that sort of egoic spiral, and how can we connect to our spirit, and how do we not get trapped in, I need to fix all this stuff before I can really connect to what is true for me from the point of view of my spirit or my super ego or my higher mind or my inner genius, whatever you want to call it, and access my intuition to help me see the next step, right? To take that next step. And so, we're going to discuss that in more detail next time. And hopefully, I haven't given it too much thought yet, but I have some practical things again that you can do. And remember, you don't have to do everything. So here's the beauty of this. When you create this awareness of what's going on with your ego and the truth and, all your patterning and feeling your feelings, and you don't have to be great at it, just to be attempting it, then you have the ability to connect to the higher truth, and your intuition will show you the next step. And then you can take the next step. Whether that is the next healing modality, the next tool. So if we give you 20 tools and you go, oh, not sure which one of those. Okay, well, you know what? There's a way that you can connect to your inner genius that will show you which one you can do next. And here's the even more beautiful part about it is if you do static back, let's say, and let's just say it's not your intuition. Let's just say you got it wrong. What's the worst that can happen? 20 minutes of relaxation, regulating your nervous system, and actually practicing self-care on yourself. That's the worst that can happen. The worst that can happen is that. So we'll be talking about that next time. And we look forward
and
to it.
Celebrate the small wins and know that this is a step-by-step, step-by-step process. You can't do this all in one go because you're going to set yourself up for failure. That's me. I always go straight for the end result. Gosh, it took me a long time to realize. Celebrate the small wins. Look back 6 months or 6 years and go, where was I 6 years ago? How much better am I now? Because a lot of us tend to think, I'm not there yet. I haven't done it. I'm still reactive. That's me. And then I'm going, geez, but where was I even a year ago? Sorry, Loretta. Yeah.
No. I'm done now. I'm done. I think I've said what I needed to say. So I'm going to say thank you to all of you. I thought this was going to be a 20-minute episode. Looks like it's an almost 60-minute episode. Thank you once again for being out there. Please, if you found this podcast useful, please will you share the link with your friends. And you know what? If I could ask you, don't just tell them about it, right? Send them the link, right? If you send me a link, if Antoinette does this, she tells me about stuff and then she sends me the link. If she just told me, I wouldn't go and look for it, but she sends me the link, which means I click on it and I watch it. Okay. So if you found this useful, please share this with your friends and your family. We would be ever so grateful. And we will see you next week.
Yes. Goodbye.